It was a movie like no other movie, and it had a profound impact on New York. That story next. We'll hear from people who, like you, watch the ultimate disaster movie tonight on television.
This is Eyewitness News with Marc Haynes, Ann Butler, Bill Gutch, Jerry Azar, and the Eyewitness News team.
Good evening. Here's what's happening. Most of you who watched the ABC movie the day after are probably still feeling just a little numb right now. Maybe you discussed what you saw with your family and friends. It still leaves you, though, wondering about life, about the world, and about what you'd do if you knew the nuclear missiles were in fact on the way here.
Here's the deal. I normally start the show with a phone call with a little wise guy joke or comment about what the show is going to be about.
Yeah, this is different.
Yeah, I figured we'd just jump right into this one because I don't know anyone our age group that wasn't scarred by the made-for-TV movie Boy in the Bubble starring John Travolta.
I never saw that one. I am so sorry. I'm a failure.
Well, luckily, that's not what we're doing today. Stay tuned, everybody.
So I just Googled made for TV movies from the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember any of them.
Oh, wow.
Well, the day after. But Adam, do you remember Adam?
Yes.
The heartbreaking story of a real life abduction of Adam Walsh.
Yes.
Something about Amelia. Do you remember that one?
Was that Ted Danson where he's diddling the stepdaughter?
Yes.
I've never heard of it.
It's tackled incest and abuse within a seemingly normal family. Groundbreaking, uncomfortable, and important. What about The Burning Bed with Farrah Fawcett? Do you remember that one? Do you? I don't remember any of these.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've heard the previous podcast or 80s Tech, where Mark had an adventure on a light pole, you'll understand why he wasn't watching.
I was not.
Made-for-TV movies.
Oh, here's one from 1980, The Boy Who Drank Too Much, starring Scott Baio.
I didn't see that. I saw Zapped with him and Amos.
Yeah,
What's his name?
I do remember that one. Remember that one.
Well, that was direct to video, but it wasn't made for TV. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, with some further ado, we are going to talk about The Day After.
You asked me to be on this podcast, and my immediate reaction in my head was, I know you, I know me. How are we going to make this funny? And I still have not come up with anything. And the answer is there's nothing about this that's funny.
No, it scared the hell out of me and everybody in my age group. So you've recently watched this. I watched this a couple of weeks ago to prepare for this episode.
Yeah.
And you told me you've watched it over the last couple of days. What were your thoughts about the movie on a real broad level after 40 years?
My initial thought was the production value of the movie. It was, in the parlance of our times, it has stood up. It's still a very, very well made movie, even by today's standards. And I would liken it to, I'm a car guy. I love cars, and you look at the stats of some of the cars from now. Cars are doing 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. But even cars that do 0 to 60 in 5 or 6 seconds today are still considered fast.
Right.
But there's some cars from the 70s that can do 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. And those cars still hold up to today's standards, right? This movie, just from the production value, when the scene when Jason Robards is on the interstate and the bombs go off and the electromagnetic pulse kills all the cars and everybody's out there. And nobody has yet been zapped down to their skeletons or anything.
Right.
And they're just like, what was that? And there's a side, there's a mushroom cloud here, and then there's another one next to it. And then there's another one next to that one. And I remember, first of all, the graphics, I use the word graphics sparingly because they didn't have graphics back then. I don't know. They're obviously practical effects because they didn't have CGI back then.
Well, hang on. I read about this today.
Oh, okay.
The U.S. government wouldn't allow ABC stock footage of mushroom clouds for the movie. So the art director got a big bucket of tea and poured cream in it and filmed it upside down. And that is cream going into tea that makes that mushroom form. It's brilliant.
No kidding.
Watch it again and you'll see it.
So you remember, of course, you remember Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Sure.
When they're at Devil's Tower in Idaho, at the end, before the big mothership comes down, right? And they're in that secret base, and Richard Dreyfuss is there, and there's a scene where the sky suddenly fills with clouds, and they're like moving all on their own, and then the mothership comes down through that.
Right.
They did that a very similar way. That was, I believe, a fish tank filled with oil, and they poured milk into it.
Oh, wow.
And the milk is less dense than the oil, so it floated up on the surface, and they were shooting up into it. And that was how they filmed that sky.
Was that Spielberg?
Yeah.
Well, I think we have a probably large delta in the budgets between a made-for-TV movie that was typical budget for those was about $5,000.
Yeah, no, right.
So, yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. No, it was just the realism of the mushroom clouds, and the stillness in the air before the shockwave hits and all of that. Dude, it messed me up.
So I think it would help the story here for our listeners, those who may not remember it, to back up a bit and start at the beginning. There was, of course, the Cuban Missile Crisis, but there was a Cold War. I think Churchill.
And they referenced the Cuban Missile Crisis
Right.
In the movie too. Yeah,
Churchill established the term. I think it was in Missouri, oddly enough, when he was speaking to a university. He said Cold War between the two forces, and it stuck. And so this was the absolute height of the Cold War. You mentioned that the Cuban Missile Crisis was talked about. It was a scene where they were in bed and they were talking.
and they were listening to the TV or the radio or something.
Mark, get this, dude. That the time between when this movie was filmed and the Cuban Missile Crisis is the exact same amount of time as today from the day Facebook was established.
Let me think about that for a second.
It's wild.
The amount of time between the Cuban Missile Crisis and when the day after came out,
Yes.
is the same as the beginning of Facebook and now.
Right now. Yes.
Oh, good Lord.
Isn't that crazy?
I am
But
old.
time
I
is
am
a
so old.
crazy thing. I know. I know. It's nuts. So it was relevant then because the adults that were watching it with us certainly remember 21 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
This big deal with Kennedy and Khrushchev and the world was going to explode. They've been through this before. Like the middle-aged couple on TV was talking about, nothing's going to happen. It's not a big deal.
Because they were taught that by the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I remember the build up to this. For several weeks before this movie, there were ads, there were commercials like, watch this with your parents. And there were packets that went out to the elementary schools, like what to do, who to watch this with, what are points to take away from it. And I know that sounds really Orson Welles' War of the Worldish now.
Yeah.
But it was the real deal. Like, we were going to have a nuclear war. So they're in Kansas. It's at KU. I really read a really cool thing about it today. They paid KU students to be extras. They paid them $50 a piece to shave their heads and asked them not to bathe for a couple of days. And so, you're a college kid for beer money. Done.
Yeah. Count me in.
I might shave my head anyway.
I mean, $50 in 1983 is like $150 now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of beer.
So, Lithgow, who would later play an alien.
I love Lithgow so much.
He said, he quotes Einstein when they're sitting in the barbershop. He said, do you know what Einstein said about World War III?
Sticks and stones. Yeah.
He said he didn't know how they're going to fight World War III, but I know how they'll fight World War IV with sticks and stones.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't know about drones, did you weird-haired dummy? Yeah, I called Einstein a dummy.
Well, he's clearly an idiot.
Right. Also, in that same scene, Lithgow has a great line. where they said, we're in the middle of the country. They're not going to get us. We're in the middle of nowhere. And Lithgow says, there's no nowhere anymore.
Oh, man. I mean,
this is very true.
You just gave me chills repeating that line because it's true. I mean, just by the nature of nuclear war, there's nowhere you can go to escape from it.
Right.
Because, I mean,
he also says right after that, that's an awful lot of bullseyes, exactly like Chief Wiggum from The Simpsons. I'm going to play that right. All right.
That's an awful lot of bullseyes.
Okay. Now everybody's heard that. That's Chief Wiggum.
Yeah. I hear it now that you played it. Yeah.
So let me set the stage here. The day after. Yeah. I'm at Northmore Elementary School. Like I said, it was terrifying. Mr. Gordon was my science teacher. Remember the girl from my story about the TRS-80 that went to the library with me?
Yeah.
Well, she's sitting next to me. And we're looking at each other the whole time he's talking. He's walking. He set the desks in a circle, like he's talking to us in the round.
Yeah.
Like, everybody pay attention.
Yeah.
And I had a University of Georgia Bulldog jersey on.
Okay.
And he said, Scott, we're a few miles from Tinker Air Force Base where they have the AWACS planes. It is a high value target. We will be one of the first to get hit. And you will have your skin burned, and it will say Georgia on your chest because the white will reflect that. And I just sat there paralyzed, like, good God. And then he turns to another girl. I can't remember her name, but she had what I think I remember was a Care Bear shirt. All the different colors and the rainbow. It looks like Walt Disney just threw up on it.
Yeah.
And he said, you're going to be a mess.
Oh, my God.
Because it's going to burn based on the color spectrum.
On the reflective nature of the different colors. Yeah.
And everybody sat there just freaking out. The one thing I take away from that story is that he's walking around and he's asking people about the movie, their impressions. And he turns this kid named Terry Nichols, unfortunate name since that was one of the Oklahoma City bombing conspirators.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And Terry, I think his dad was a doctor. Terry had money. Everybody knew it. And he said, I didn't watch it. We're going to watch it tonight. And of course, the teacher said, it's a one-night deal. It's only on tonight. And Terry leans back and says, oh, yeah, we got a Betamax. Or no, he said, we got a VCR.
Yeah, VCR.
And so that just needle ripping off the record.
Mm.
My science teacher, really? Was it VHS or beta? And Terry said, it's beta. And they start nerding out like, yeah, Sony's superior. The Betamax is superior. I think it's going to win.
It was.
I think it's going to win this. Yeah. And so he starts nerding out for like 5 minutes. They're talking about this and everybody else is like, hey, we're going to die. Come back here.
That
was a rough day at school.
You know what's interesting about the whole VHS Betamax thing is that both VHS and Betamax were above the technical capabilities of televisions anyway. So at the end of the day, you couldn't even really tell the difference between the two.
I put that on my list of crap I don't care about.
Just stuff you don't care about. Yeah, I get it. All right.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting.
See, after the movie, they had a round table with Ted Koppel, Carl Sagan, William F. Buckley Jr., McNamara, who was on Kennedy's cabinet.
Yeah.
Henry Kissinger. Like, you're sitting around talking about what happens. Of course, William F. Buckley is like, I'm all for it. Just bomb the piss out of them. Like, well,
I haven't seen that. I would love to hear what Carl Sagan said on that.
Sagan was all, exactly what Sagan said. We can't have this. We gotta
millions and millions and millions.
Right. Atoms.
I miss that guy.
Yeah. So here's the deal. It's a story. Let's walk through it again.
Okay.
It's a story of college town, Lawrence, Kansas.
Yep.
But ultimately, Kansas City, is a big population center near there. And these people live near these missile silos.
Like literally in their backyards.
Yes.
And that's real.
And these things are real.
Yeah, it's real.
I told you a couple of days ago, a guy we used to work with grew up in that part of Missouri, and he said he would drive by them every day. And so he would drive by these silos that they scared the hell out of us with in a movie. It had to be just an absolute freak show to drive by those every day.
You know what's weird too is that when you drive by them, it's in reality what you're driving by is like a fence around some grass, right?
Yeah.
And you can't see the silo because it's underground, but it's staffed 24/7, 365 days a year by like 2 or 3 guys wearing,
Right.
wearing fatigues that are down there sitting at computers waiting for the phone to ring for them to press the end of the world button.
Well, as the story goes, they never really say if the U.S. or the Soviets were the first aggressors. They did say that there was some NATO activity and the Soviets bombed Brussels, Belgium, which started essentially the dominoes falling. And so the U.S. is engaged at that point. And there is a scene where some of the college kids are trying to listen to the radio as their hair is falling out. And he said, "Is that all that are going to tell us?" And he says, "What else do you need to know?" He said, "I want to know who started it first." And the
I
guy
remember
turns
that
to him and
scene,
says,
yeah.
"Why does it matter?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Like, we're done." So,
I mean, if you think about the chess game that a nuclear war is, right?
yes.
If we even think the other side has launched other missiles, we have to launch our missiles because
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
we have to, because their missiles are coming towards our missile silos and they're going to blow our own missiles up first. So
Right.
if we don't launch them, we're just going to lose all of our missiles. And
Right.
then we're all going to die and none of them are going to die. And it's not going to be the stalemate that it is already anyway.
There's really no way around that. That's exactly right. It's, mutually assured destruction.
Right.
But there was a famous, I guess, a war game in the Soviet era. And I think it was Leonid Brezhnev who they gave him their version of the nuclear football. And they were wargaming. So the Americans are suspected to have sent their missiles. And they're you hear the sirens and people running around, and he couldn't do it. He started sweating and breathing and like his heart rate went up and he didn't hit the button. And this was Brezhnev, who was no, howdy doody. This guy was Soviet as could be.
Yeah.
And so they, we were taught back then that they are the soulless communists whose women cheat in East Germany in the Olympics.
Steroids.
Yeah. Rocky's going to go over there and take care of them. But, they had the same, it's, as you grow up and as you look back on it historically, they had the same trepidations, the same fears that we did.
Oh, of course they did. There were two
Can
other.
you imagine? Oh, go ahead.
There were 2 other movies that, and I can't remember the name of one of them, but you're gonna know it. There were 2 other movies that did an equally good job of pointing out and bringing awareness to the dangers of nuclear war. One of them was War Games, and you kind of said the title of that a little while ago, Matthew Broderick in War Games, and that was just a computer simulation that they didn't know was a computer simulation that said that Russia had launched 5,000 nukes, ICBMs at us, and they decided to wait until they confirmed, through
Dabney Coleman did.
Yeah, right. And the other one,
the next is electric. I got it. Break into Electric Boogaloo.
yes, that was the other one. Right. Exactly. I mean, without good head spins on, if you can't do a proper head spin at the intersection of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and, Main Street, the world is going to end.
That's exactly right.
No, the other one was.
Do you have a third one?
Yes, I do. It was that submarine movie that was not Hunt for Red October. It was the other one.
Crimson Tide?
Yes, Crimson Tide. That was the one. That one almost end of the world. Just very much like War Games.
There's another one similar, but it's not quite. It didn't engage an opponent. Remember Manhattan Project, where that kid built a nuclear weapon?
Well, he built it couldn't fire off, but he built but he couldn't detonate it. If I recall the facts of the act, because that was based on a true story.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah. No, the kid built a nuke, but he didn't have a way to actually, because the way a nuclear bomb works, you've got the 2 different fissionable materials, and you need a TNT to blow them together to start fusion, but he didn't have that part of it. So it wasn't like armed, but it was.
Wait a minute. Hang on. He made a nuclear weapon, and the only thing he didn't have was a Looney Tunes stick of dynamite.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
And I mean, like literally, Acme was a quarter of a mile down the road.
That's, yeah, when you go in there to get your giant magnet and your pile of birdseed.
I know. That reminds me, I've
crazy.
got so many giant magnets. Now I got to get rid of some of those.
Right. That's wild. I got to watch that movie. I remember being entertained by it. But that really tells the story about the era. Nina singing about red balloons that freaked out all of Germany.
Yep.
And made a pop song out of it. Like, it was how we lived.
The war machines came alive, opened up their eagle eye.
Right. Also in Oklahoma, because we were so close to Tinker Air Force Base here in the south part of Oklahoma City, they said in case of nuclear war, everybody get under your desk and cover your head.
Yeah, stop, drop, and roll.
Because you'll be fine. It was different from the tornado drill where they had us go out in the hallway. But this one was like, all right, remember, hallway for a tornado, under your desk.
For a nuclear bomb.
For, a nuclear bomb.
Well, it's actually been proven that desks where the top part lifts up to give you a place to put your pencils in and stuff,
right?
Those actually have radiation blocking.
Well, they're fortified
properties.
with paste, and cigar boxes and
crayons.
We're good.
So no,
I might get some of that here. I don't know, Mark. Honestly, I don't think we can oversell. I mean, it's not hyperbole to say it was everywhere. And I remember when the wall fell, 89. It was so crazy because the world had grown to learn that's how there were two Europes. Romania, Georgia, all the guys in the east, and then Germany split down the middle.
Yeah.
And eventually tensions dissolved. There are plenty of theories about how that is. That Reagan just flat out outspent them, and they couldn't support themselves.
Well, he asked Gorbachev very politely to tear the wall down.
Yes, he did.
He was a gentleman about that.
I love that.
And it's interesting too because the movie, the scenario that the movie The Day After gives us, very realistically could have happened.
Oh yeah, yeah, and the adults there who have seen this before had seen saber rattling from Khrushchev. Took his shoe off at the UN, pounds it on the lectern, and they've seen that over and over and over with those guys. And then Nixon talked tough. Certainly Kennedy did. So it was just the same old thing, but and it may have been, but man, I don't think so. Like I think that tensions. I don't know if it just spun up. There was an Ozzy Osbourne song on Ultimate Sin. Was that 86 about nuclear war? Like it was everywhere. It was part of culture. So I don't know.
Well, I remember going to sleep at night as a kid, being terrified that bombs were going to go off while I was sleeping.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
And the reality is we were actually nowhere near that happening. And part of that is, the media being the media, interpreting current events in ways that sell advertising. So that's something that's never going to change. And I get it. The media is a business and they're going to be the media.
Speaking of advertising, listen to this. This is from Reagan's diary. It was on Columbus Day. He wrote this, Monday, October 10th, 1983. He got an advanced screening a month before this showed at Camp David. They showed him. He writes the following. In the morning at Camp David, I ran a tape of the movie ABC is running on the air November 20th. It's called The Day After. It has Lawrence, Kansas wiped out in a nuclear war with Russia. It's powerfully done. All $7 million worth. It's very effective and left me greatly depressed.
Reagan
so
said that?
Far, yes, this is in his diary. So far, they haven't sold any of the 25 ad spots scheduled, and I could see why. Whether it will help the anti-nukes or not, I can't say. My own reaction was one of having to do all we can to have a deterrent, and to see that there is never a nuclear war
Yeah.
back to the White House.
Wow. So that's what he wrote. Those are his own personal thoughts. He wrote that thinking nobody
Yeah.
might ever read those.
Right. Yeah, it was in his diary.
Yeah.
It's rumored that he wrote a note to the head of ABC or the director, I'm not sure, about the nuclear disarmament agreement that happened, I think is Reykjavik, soon after at a summit meeting, where he said, the movie played a part of this. This movie was dubbed into Russian. The only stipulation ABC gave them was that you can dub it, you play it with no edits and no commentary from the state. Just play it as is.
Did they?
They did.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was pretty progressive of Gorbachev to do that.
It was. Yeah. Actually, I don't even think Gorby was in office then. It was just before him. Maybe a couple. During the early 80s, a lot of those Soviet premiers died of lead poisoning.
Yeah.
Well, lead,
Yeah, lead
in the heart.
Yeah, or the head.
Right.
Got lead in the head.
So I don't know. So I'm going to link the movie in YouTube. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's a free watch on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm going to link that in the comments because I didn't come here to give a retelling of the movie. I don't think it can be done with a couple of knuckleheads on a podcast.
No, it can't. You're right.
So it needs to be seen. I really wanted us to set the stage for generations that came behind us and people who just weren't there. And by there, I mean like in quotes, lowercase t, there in the era.
Hello, Free Nights and Weekends listeners. This is Nicole.
And this is Heather of Like Whatever,
a podcast for, by, and about Gen X.
Join us each week for a new episode about all things Gen X.
We record on Tuesdays and new episodes drop on Fridays.
You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts at Like Whatever Pod.
And find us on all the socials at Like Whatever Pod.
Come drink from the hose and ride until the streetlights come on with us.
Or don't. Like, whatever.
Bye.
So that's that. The day it happened is said to have been Saturday, September 16th. So I was curious, who did Kansas play that day in football?
Oh my God.
They played Wichita State.
It's funny you looked that up.
I'm a college football nerd, man.
Yeah, I know.
They played Wichita State at Memorial Stadium in Lawrence, Kansas. They won 57-6. I don't remember Kansas ever winning a game in the 80s, so this might be the one. But that game was on September 17th, so somebody got their dates wrong. Either the Kansas Athletic page or Wikipedia, whatever page I said that this was supposed to have happened on. I guess, we just both watched the movie, as I guess we could have told. But anyway, the impressions of the movie itself, I think we need to revisit that. You mentioned to me several scenes within the movie that were particularly gripping. The scene where you really get how big this is after the explosions hit and you hear the screaming and you see the buildings falling and you see the skeletons flash before people are vaporized.
Yeah.
Look, I watched that in 2005, and that was
messed me up so bad.
Stunner. Yeah, back then. Oh, good Lord. Yeah.
And did you notice that the Terminator franchise stole that technique?
Oh.
Well, there was the scene in Terminator. What was the Terminator where they showed the Los Angeles getting nuked? There was a scene where the woman was holding onto the fence and she got vaporized. She turned into a skeleton first, and then
that's right.
They totally stole that from the day after. And I don't think that's how it actually works. I don't think you turn into an X-ray of yourself before you fall to the ground in a bag of bones like that. I think you probably
I think it was almost like a play, like where you're limited on a stage and they can only do what you can see there without the magic of Hollywood. I think it was literally like bad guy tying the damsel up to the railroad tracks. This is what's going to happen. And this is how we can most closely display it to you.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if the what someone looks like when they're getting nuked is accurate or not, as long as it's scary.
Right.
And I think And we know what people look like when they get nuked because we have nuked Japan twice. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's already been a nuclear war. World War II was a nuclear war.
Yes, it's true.
And, we know exactly what happens to people when they're at different distances from, ground zero. And so I think one part that's probably more realistic, there was a scene, remember at the end of the movie, Jason Robards rather, hops on an army truck and hitches a ride back to Kansas City.
Yeah.
And he's walking through the ruins of Kansas City, and he sees there's a scene where it's a blown out building, and there's a woman who's just charred black, who's like crushed in the rubble, but the top half of her is still sticking out, and it looks like she just got hit with a flamethrower. And it was tremendously disturbing to see. But I think that probably is more realistic of what would happen.
I wonder if she got paid $50.
I hope she did.
I did too.
Actually, I don't even think that was probably a prop. It probably wasn't even actually.
I don't know. Looked pretty real when I was 13. Well, when you were 13. When I was 11, 12.
Until you think back to the standards of television back then, there were a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? There were a lot of gory elements of this movie and jarring elements that I think were let by that surpassed some of the standards that television had back then.
I think that's one of the reasons ABC was just so careful to send leaflets to school and make sure that children, war widows, and pregnant women weren't terrified. Just to let them. This is coming, and this is special. We talked about it before. The very special edition of TV shows where it's not funny. This is the one where Arnold gets diddled. I don't want to watch that. Different Strokes.
I mean, nowadays you could air a movie like that and nobody'd blink an eye.
Right.
But back in 1983, I mean, you could barely say heck on TV.
So there was an ABC executive who said that he saw the China Syndrome, and that gave him the idea to
that was
bring
Richard Dreyfuss too, wasn't it?
I think Jack Lemmon and maybe. Yeah.
I say Richard Dreyfuss too, because he was in Close Encounters that we referenced earlier.
Right.
But wasn't Richard Dreyfuss the reporter in China Syndrome?
I don't remember.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Okay.
So the initial name of the movie was going to be Silence in Heaven. It's taken from a verse in Revelations that claims that when the final seal is broken, there'll be silence in heaven.
The happiest book of the Bible.
Oh, it's just full of joy.
I read that sometimes when I'm in a bad mood.
Right. The final seal is broken, and there'll be silence in heaven for about half an hour, which is kind of a cool title for the movie. Also, it's worth noting.
Good time to take a nap.
Yeah, it wasn't lost on the good Lord. It wasn't lost on the director that's the approximate time it would take for each warhead to land once it left Russia and left to the U.S. So silence and having just 30 minutes. Like
those missiles are going like 5,000 miles an hour or something ridiculous.
So you just go out and buy yourself the most customized monster truck you can.
Yeah.
And put it on I don't care what the payments are, dude.
Take out a loan.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what we had. Fatalistic. I don't know if we did this story justice or not. My instinct is to say no, but I'm going to link the movie, guys. If you want a refresher to what it was like, or if you want an insight on what it was like to live through that, minus the conversation with my science teacher about Betamax. Any final parts? What parts of the movie stood out to you the most? I think you mentioned one to me today.
I've got two thoughts on that. As I was rewatching it, and literally the last time I watched it was live in 1983 until a couple days ago. It was that much time with it. As I was rewatching it, I started thinking to myself, something they're getting wrong here is the breakdown of society. And, there's going to be a lot more lawlessness and killing and riots and this kind of thing. But, just hold on a second. It happens. They finally get to that in the movie.
Right.
No, they do. And that absolutely would happen. Yeah. And there was a scene where Jason Robards was in the back of the truck going back to Kansas City, and he drives by a firing squad. Do you remember that?
Yes.
There was 2 guys
Yeah.
tied to posts, and they were like, ready, aim, fire. And then they were killing 2 guys. And I could not, for the life of me, figure out how that fit into the storyline. Because, the president had made an address on the radio. There was still government. Government still existed.
Yeah.
Obviously, martial law.
My theory is that was Earl, a neighbor that guy hated, and here's his chance. Who's going to know?
Finally. Yeah.
Would drive him over to Kansas City and throw him on the pile of charred bodies. Who's going to know?
But I mean, what can you do in a post-nuclear apocalypse society that's so bad that you get the firing squad?
Look, man.
Why is there firings?
Nerves are frayed. Mistakes were made. We shot at a couple of guys because, I'm sorry.
But think it through a little further. After a nuclear apocalypse, there are no more factories making ammunition. So why would you waste bullets on a couple of bums that needed to, that broke the law, quote unquote, at the time? Why not just stab them or beat them on the head with a rock or something? Why waste bullets on them?
God, you thought about this.
I did. A
couple of theories. Yeah. One, they're in rural Kansas, so there's a good chance that there's a whole section of the house dedicated to small arms and ammunition.
But there's still a finite amount. They're not making any more bullets.
Mark, how was the bad guy in Waterworld smoking? I don't know. All right. Some questions.
Valid.
Yeah. Some questions just, it's Hollywood magic.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't get the whole firing squad thing. I don't know how that fit into the paradigm. But the other thought I had was the very, very last scene of the movie. Jason Robards finds at least what he thinks is his old house, or the ruins of his old house. I don't know how he could figure out that pile of bricks was his house.
Google Earth.
Sure, okay. But there was a family sitting there by a fire in the ruins of his old house, and he walks in, and he's already covered with radiation burns, and he's obviously got days to live anyway. But he says something like, get out of my house, and which was just a knee-jerk reaction to seeing people sitting in what used to be his house. And the dad of the family that is sitting in the ruins of his house, after being told to get out of his house, instead offers Jason Robards' character food, which he didn't need to do it. They don't have a lot of food.
Right.
That was a very, very generous offering on his part. I think it was interesting that the food he offered him was an onion. I mean, get out of my house. I will in a minute, but sir, would you like an onion?
Would you care for a rhubarb?
Would you care for an onion? And it was just it was a nice looking raw onion.
Right.
But I mean, at times like that, onions, yes, please give me the onion. I need the calories.
Let me tell you something about that. I would eat an onion like an apple. I love onions more than anybody you've ever met.
I have eaten onions like an apple. I have.
The takeaway.
It was on a dare, and there were girls there, and I think I might have made a few bucks, but I still ate an onion like an apple.
I would shock you when I was younger what I would do if chicks were around and there were a few bucks involved, what I would eat.
Oh, the things I have done. Yeah. At the end of that scene, so the guy offers him some food, and then Jason Robards just falls to his knees and then falls to the ground. He's not dead, but you could tell that, and this is a guy who throughout the movie has been a hero. He's a doctor. He's saved a whole bunch of people. He helped treat the injuries of a whole bunch of people. He became the leader at the hospital where he was a doctor, and brought order where chaos was breaking out. And he did a lot of really good things in this movie. But everybody has a breaking point. Eventually, he said, "Screw this," and he got in a truck and hitched a ride to Kansas City to find his old house. Blah blah blah. Finds the family. The guy gives an onion, and now he drops down to his knees. He is such a good actor. Yes. Robards is just and it occurred to me while I was watching this, but he drops down to his knees and he's covered with radiation burns. His hair is almost completely out, and the guy who he was just threatening comes over and they just hug each other. They're on their knees, embracing. And obviously all of them are going to be dead soon. But I love that the movie ended with that scene, because it ended with humanity being humanity.
It's a good call.
Yeah.
Wow,
And
that's a great point.
If you stay till the very end of the movie, you get to walk away from it with not visions of burnt corpses and mushroom clouds, but instead the vision of two human beings loving each other like they're supposed to do.
Wow. Well, yeah, gosh, what a great bow on this one. Hey, tell everybody what you do and how they can get a hold of you.
I am a personal trainer, and you can reach me through www.mofit.com.
Spell that for the dummies like Einstein.
Mary Oscar Echo Frank India Tango.com.
I enjoy when I have an Indian tech support guy saying S as in C.
Oh my God.
All right, guys. Marc is a personal trainer. He works remotely. He's in Titusville, Florida, but you can be in Alaska and you can get all buff thanks to Marc Boucher. Hit him up.
I can get you buff.
Yep. Hit him up. I will have the link to the YouTube movie. And we might close with Lithgow sounding like Chief Wiggum again. All right. Thanks, Marc.
Thank you, Scott.
All right. This was a fun one. As always, stick around to the very end. We've got bloopers, taunts, recipes, incantations. Anyway, always bonus material at the end. Find us on the socials. Free Nights and Weekends podcast on X, Facebook, Instagram. See you next Friday.
So you want to hear a funny story?
Real bad.
Okay. So you remember the night that the USA played the USSR, back then it was still the Soviet Union, for the final game to win the gold medal of the Olympics in 1980. And I don't remember the score, but USA won the game like in the last second of the game.
You mean, are you talking about the Olympic hockey?
Yeah.
I think they beat Sweden for the gold.
No, they
beat
it was USSR, it was Russia.
I thought they beat Russians to get to the gold medal round.
Am I remembering it wrong? Well, anyway, they beat Russia and it was a huge game.
Uh-huh.
But I thought it was to win the Olympics, but I could be wrong about that. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to the story. So fast forward to 1993 or 94. I was working for a country radio station in Vermont. I was doing, I think it was morning or afternoon drive up there. I don't remember. And I had to go to Lake Placid to introduce the band Sawyer Brown. Are you familiar with Sawyer Brown?
I am.
Okay. So Sawyer Brown was playing on stage in the Olympic Stadium in Lake Placid. So they asked me to introduce Sawyer Brown on stage in the same arena that the USA beat Russia back in 1980.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I was up there in front of like 20,000 people.
Did you wrap a flag around yourself?
No, this is way better. So I went up on stage and they were like, ahead of time, they knew me. They were like, look, dude, keep it short. Here's the sponsors of the show. Introduce Sawyer Brown. Get off the stage. I was like, gotcha. Okay. So we go up on stage. I walk out there and I went by, my name on the air was Jim Cooper at the time. So I walked out and I said, the place quieted down when I walked out because they were like, oh, is this Sawyer Brown? And so I went up to the mic and I said, good evening, everybody. Hello, I'm Jim Cooper from WOKO Radio. And the place went nuts. 20,000 people were cheering for me.
To grab a guitar?
No, but oh my God, my head just went. And I was like, introduce Sawyer Brown and get off the stage immediately? I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
No. I mean,
so then you said, hey, what's the deal with airline food? You start tugging at your collar.
Went into my shtick. No. So I said, ladies and gentlemen, isn't it so cool that we all get to come together here in this historic location to watch such an awesome band as Sawyer Brown, and everybody cheered. And then I said, it's so cool that this is the same exact room. I said, all of us are together tonight in the same room. where back in 1980 at the hockey game at the Olympics, the United States kicked Russia's ass. Got the level, the volume, the decibel level of the screaming is just unrealized. There was no way to describe. It was
especially if they're locals. Like,
oh yeah,
upstate New York, they grow up playing hockey. Like, it's a big deal.
Yeah, and I look over to the side of the stage, and the stage manager's doing this. He's like doing the hand through the throat thing, like violently get off the stage.
Oh yeah, we're brought to you by Slappy's Taco. Ladies and gentlemen, Sawyer Brown.
Right.
Oh, that'd be tough.
But I mean, how do you not take it? I mean, even if I got fired, how could I not do that?
No, you cannot not do that.
No, that has to be done.
Oh my gosh.
And in fact, had I been fired for that, it would have even been a better story.
I would have found something to make a top hat and a cane out of and tap dance sideways off the stage. Like,
yep.
Yes.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my darling.
That is good. Mark, I couldn't think of anybody better to have on this show. And I'm just glad it didn't happen because I got to work for Tim Thompson later, who saw those silos in Missouri.
Yeah.
And it worked out.
I know Tim very well. He was a manager of mine for a while.
Can you imagine? You imagine driving by those things?
No, I can't.
Or being one of those cows out there and like you wandered in there on top of it. The thing takes off. You just blast it out to space. That's a tough get for a cow.
I don't think they'd understand it.
I barely do. All right, we're done. Mark, thank you.
Thanks for having me, Scott. I think we did a pretty good job of remembering it and paying its due dues. And, we threw a little bit of laughs in there too, but it needs to be taken lightly and seriously at the same time.
Yeah, man, it was heavy.
That's an awful lot of bullseyes.